All right. As I just mentioned, so we're going to talk about the first reporting for RRF grant. Tuesday afternoon, normally the webinar is normally given by our managing partner, Ying. So I'm doing a sub for her today. So I'm a professor and also a partner at the firm right now. And so let's quickly give a brief introduction of our own firm. So we are a CPA firm, so website communitycpa.com. We have a YouTube channel where you can find a lot of our past webinars, and this including today's. Today's will be posted there very soon. And so we have a Facebook as well as Twitter accounts, and then so we do provide a full suite of CPA services, from accounting advisory or business advisory, audit, payroll, tax, all the way to legal. We do have licensed attorneys on our staff. And we, of course, we do U.S. Accounting and taxes, but also we specialize in international services as well. So we collectively, our staff speak 9 different languages. So we do serve the world. So the world is shrinking with internet and everything, but also of our staff with all the languages, language skills that, of course, will make us more readily in a better position to serve everybody. All right, so Ying Sa, who is the regular Tuesday webinar speaker, and as I mentioned earlier, she's not available today, so I'm doing a sub. And she has a book published, Appointment Being at 8 p.m. that talks about starting up business, and she's having a second book coming out, Appointment Being at 10 a.m. So that's in the new book. She's going to talk about how to develop a business. Okay, so 8 a.m. you just get up and to start up the business, and then 10 a.m. so you need to develop the business, and then she will have a couple more books coming out after that as well. All right, all right. So with being a public webinar, so I want to give a couple of disclaimers here. So as usual, so basically, what we're saying is, if you want us to be responsible, and we need you to become our client, well, of course, we do welcome everybody to become our clients. We will do our best to serve everybody. And if you're just attending the webinar, that does not form a client relationship. And so then you will be taking some risk on your own if you're relying purely on the information provided in the webinar alone. All right, so we're going to talk about the RRF reporting. So let's do a quick overview. And so the RRF, the Restaurant Revitalization Fund, is a grant authorized by the Congress under the American Rescue Plan Act. Was signed into law earlier this year, and so the purpose is to help restaurants and other food businesses cope with the COVID damages and try to survive the pandemic. And so there's some funding amount calculation, but the application's been long closed, so I'm not going to go too much into the funding amount discussion. Okay. All right. I do want to let me just quickly mention one more thing. So actually, I already said that the RRF is a grant. That means they do not need to be paid back. And so as long as you use the grant properly, okay, following all the guidelines, use the funds on eligible uses, and also you use it all up before the deadline, which is March 11th, 2023. So if the amount is used up by that time, by that date on eligible uses, and then this RRF money does not need to be paid back. It's a grant. And so there is a list of eligible uses, so a lot of those actually can be interpreted very broadly. such as business operating expense. That covers almost all, just about all regularly encountered business expenses. That include buying. Some of those actually, all of the above actually can all be operating expenses. But if any regular business expense that don't fit into any of the above categories, you can probably put into this business operating expenses, such as even CPA firm expenses if you're paying your accountants or attorneys for doing some business work or legal work for you, and they can probably fall under the business operating expenses. Okay, so let me just quickly mention some other ones. First and foremost, the payroll cost, including sick leaves, and then mortgages and rents that can be paid by RRF. And so if you have any debt service, your business has any debt, such as if you own the property or the business property, but you do have a mortgage on it, so then you would be paying principal and interest, so that would be a debt. So the debt payment, the monthly payment for the mortgage can be paid by RRF fund. And of course utilities, gas, electricity, internet, and all that. And then if you have any items that need to be repaired or maintained, such as air AC units need to be cleaned, or there's a breakdown in the water heater or AC units, and you need to repair those. And these all are eligible expenses under the RRF guidelines. Okay, and then being a restaurant, so if you, in order to maintain social distance or for things of that nature, you need to construct outdoor seating, and so the construction cost for outdoor seating is also allowable under RRF. Let me just quickly mention that. But if you are expanding your business, so you want just make your seating areas bigger, the inside seating area bigger, that does not appear to be allowable expenses. Okay, so the construction of only the outdoor seating is permissible under RRF, but not construction of interior seatings. All right, but of course, if you are repairing any interior seating, so that would fall under the maintenance expense, so that is an allowable expense. Okay, and then business supplies. Well, actually, let me look at this one first. Okay, so business food and beverage expenses. If you buy any materials for your restaurant business use, and that's cost of goods. Another way to call that is cost of goods sold. And so these are allowable under RRF. Okay, and if you have other supplies that you need to purchase, such as cleaning supplies, office supplies, things like that, that do not fall under the food and beverage expense, and you can put them under the business supplies. Okay, and then also the business supplies would include protective equipment, the COVID PPE, and of course cleaning materials, as I mentioned earlier. And so a lot of other expenses, if they don't fall into any of those categories, the chances are they would fall under the business operating expenses. So then you can still, there's almost a catch-all to put those expenses in there. All right, so these are the allowable uses of RRF, and so the reporting requirements. So all recipients have until March 11th to use up the RRF fund, and so the first report is due December 31st, 2021. Okay, so and then if you use it all up, and you will have to certify that the proceeds have been used on eligible expenses. And if there's anything remaining, you're going to have to repeat the reporting next year. So you basically have to do it annually. So you would do one in 2022. If there is still more money left, still money left to be spent in the first couple of months of 2023. So then you will have to do a third reporting. All right. So the reporting schedule, just a quick recap. So the first one is due December 31st, 2021. Okay, so that's for the any expenses paid by RRF for expenses incurred during this period. Okay, February 15, 2020 through 2021 year to date, well, depending on whichever date you are finishing the report. For example, if you're doing that today, so then the cutoff would be November 30th of 2021. Okay. All right, and then if there's any money left, so then you need to do a report by the end of next year. Okay, so so basically we'll start from whatever the date and where you left off, and you pick up from where you left off. So for example, if you did the first report today, and then when you do next year's report, then presumably the expenses will be for the period from December 1st, 2021 through with whatever date you'll be reporting on, year 2022. Okay, and if there are money still left to be spent in 2023, and you have a couple of months to do that in the beginning of 2023, and then there will be a report due. Well, possible, and I guess if they do an annual report, maybe the 2023 you can wait until December, but more likely SBA will give you a much sooner deadline to do the final report, because 2023 there are only a couple of months that you are allowed to use the RRF. Okay, March 11, 2023 is the absolute deadline for spending all of your RRF fund. Okay, and for 2021 reporting, the RRF recipient should have received should have received a email notification from SBA that looks like this. So basically, that's telling the recipient the first report is due no later than December 31st of 2021. And in that email, there's also a link for you to submit the report. And so I'll just quickly skip the other things, okay? But if you somehow delete that email, or don't that if that link doesn't work, you don't really have to worry about it, because it's the same website that you use to apply for RRF in the very beginning. Okay, so it's a restaurants.sba.gov. Just go to that website, and so this is the familiar website if you did the application, and so that you hopefully you have kept your login credentials and the username, password, and there is also a secondary verification by cell phone. Okay, so if you have all of that information, and you can just pull out that information and log on and to finish the report. And if you forgot your password, obviously you can always reset. And if you need help, there's a number on the website you can also find to call SBA for login assistance. All right, and once you're logged on, this is what it looked like. So there's a restaurant name, so you can confirm you are in the right, you logged into the right account. Okay, and there's a start button for you to click to start doing the report. Okay, so these are the expenses that you need to report. So this will look different from what the application web page was. Okay, so the web application page, if you recall, so then the list on the left column here, you have a list of steps: application, signing, SBA approval, fund send, and then there's also actually a post award report button, not button, but a step there that's showing on the I shouldn't even say the step, but it's more like a status indicator. Okay, so in the application page, there's several status indicators for the different steps. Okay, and then you can still actually find that by clicking on the restaurant name. And here, of course, for privacy, I blackened out the restaurant name. But if you log into your own account, you click on the restaurant name, and that actually will bring into the application status page. So it shows you all the steps. Generally speaking, it should show the last step that's showing there is the fund is being sent or deposited into your account, and there are a couple of other steps to complete, and one of them would be the post-award report. Okay, but anyway, so if you're just doing the report here, and just click on the Start button, and you can start the reporting process. And SBA give you an estimated time of 10 minutes. Well, that may be true if you have everything ready and just need to do the data entry and complete the report. That 10 or 15 minutes may be enough. But as I will explain later, so it does take you a little bit time to get ready. Okay, so don't be fooled by SBA say, 10 minutes is absolutely 10 minutes, but no, it's actually 10 minutes if you have everything ready, and then you just need the data entry. That may be able to 10 minutes. Otherwise, it's going to be longer. Than you should allow yourself some more longer time to complete this report. Okay, so anyway, so if you click on the Start button, and you'll be taken to a post-award report page where you'll be entering the data, okay, for the different categories of expenses. Okay, and then there is 2022 data entry, 2023. These are grayed out, as is the subtotal and total. Okay, so these are all grayed out. So basically, all you need to enter are the expenses that were incurred in the allowable period from 2020 to year-to-date 2021. Okay, so the year 20 that begins February 15. Let me just quickly mention that since we see this 2020 through 2021, we had to be a little careful with the period. Let's call that a covered period. Okay. And so basically, you need to be expenses that are incurred in that period, okay, from February 15, 2020 through the date of reporting, for example, today, but it must be paid by RRF, okay? So if you, now we're already in almost end of 2021, so a lot of expenses that were incurred, that you incurred in 2020, you probably already paid with other funds, such as business income or PPP or some other, sources of funds, and then they are not are paid by RRF. You cannot say 2022 the one you already paid was that were already paid in 2020. You cannot legitimately claim that was paid by RRF, which you only obtained in May or even June of 2021. So to be on the safe side, I would make sure that even though it says that starting from 2020, I would only include expenses that you actually paid after you received the RRF fund, okay, like in end of May or beginning of June, somewhere around that time. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, if you have those expenses summed up already, let's say on a piece of paper, so then of course all you need to do is just enter those numbers, and so then I think I cut off the screenshot. So there's a save and a continue button. Okay, so then you can submit button. So then you submit the data. Well, actually, I do have the bottom portion here. You just click the submit and continue to e-signature button, and then you will be taken to a DocuServe page, and then you can continue from the DocuServe, complete the signature, and you're done. So basically so if you have all the data, it probably doesn't take a lot of time. So I would say 10-15 minutes is probably enough. But okay, so you do need a lot of time to get ready for that. Okay, so you have to do some preparation and to calculate the precise amount of a payroll amount that were paid by RRF. Okay, and the rent that was paid by RRF, utilities, and all of those. Okay, and you don't have to summarize the expenses in every category because the total number cannot exceed the total RRF fund. For example, I actually have seen clients that their payroll alone since June, so let's say June through 11, their payroll alone already exceeded the RRF amount, then they don't have to do all of the calculation. All they need to do is calculate the payroll amount, or pull out the payroll report for that period, and so that may be even already be more than the fund amount, and you cannot put more than the fund amount. So basically, the maximum you put is the fund amount. So you just have one item, basically in that case, in that example. So let's say if your payroll, if your fund you were given $100,000, your payroll was $110,000. So then you don't have to do anything other calculation, just payroll amount at one line, and you don't put your actual payroll amount of 110. You just put 100,000 there, which is the fund amount, RF fund amount, and then just have one item, and you're done. Okay, but if your payroll is not enough, and then you have to sum up all the other things. And I will come back to mention a thing about the payroll later. Okay, so let me just go to, if you do need to sum up all the other expenses in this example here, for instance. So we have a spreadsheet to sum up the expenses monthly from June all the way through November now. But if you need December, of course, you can put December column there. And if you need part of December, because it's due December 31st, you don't want to wait until December 31st to do all of this. Okay, so if you do want to include some December expenses, that should be okay. All right, and so in this particular example here, I actually did not even include any payroll amount at all. Okay, so basically I had most of the money was spent on food and beverages, okay, buying raw materials for the restaurant business, okay, and then there is a rent, for the facility and some utility cost. So then that add up to the total already. And then, in fact, if I put in the entire rent amount for November, that will exceed the amount. So I have to reduce, either here or here, we have to reduce something. And then so that I stay within, or actually I wanted to reach exactly the fund amount. Okay. And also in this example, I did start out with doing some utility calculation, but then I realized I actually don't need it, okay, because those two items, the food and beverage and rent, those two items would already exceed the fund amount. So I basically in the end I just used those two items there. All right, and then of course each item you wanted actually, for example, for the June buying food and beverages, you probably, and that's not just a one transaction. You probably were buying weekly or even daily in some cases. So you had to add up all of the different receipts in that month for buying food and beverages, and then you come up with that monthly number, and then you do that same thing for the other months, and then that'll give you the subtotal for that category, okay, and then you sum up across all the different categories to get the total RRF spending. And so you do need to add up all the relevant receipts, okay. So later I will mention. Let me just mention that already here, okay. So you do need to keep receipts and payment records because SBA may ask you for those things. Right, and so once you have done the calculation, and again, use the example I just did, so I just have the two categories, and so then all I need to just enter two numbers, and then it add up to the total fund amount, and then I'm done. So yeah, but as you probably can imagine, it does take more than 10 minutes to finish all that calculation, to dig out all the receipts for the 5-6 months, and also add them all up. So then it does take, the whole thing is going to take more than 10 minutes for sure. All right. And so let me mention a few things. And so RRF is a federal program. So there are a few other federal programs that were helping business to survive the pandemic, such as including PPP-1, in fact, 2 rounds of PPP, and ERC credits, tax credit, and so there are other federal programs, and you probably have seen the guidelines for each of those programs states that you cannot double count the same expense under different federal programs. Okay, so if, for example, if a portion of the salary was paid by PPP, you cannot also use that same portion of a payroll to count against the RRF. Okay, so double dipping like that is not allowed. So if you use the payroll, for example, as a RRF expense category, and you want to make sure your payroll expense counted towards the RRF, you make sure you have excluded the amount, the payroll that you have paid with the PPP-1 or PPP-2. Okay, and also you exclude those wages that you used to calculate the employee retention credit or ERC credit. So basically, there's no double dipping across all the different federal programs. So that's a particular issue for salary expense. So pay particular attention to the wage expense. Make sure you don't double count or even triple count the payroll expense under different programs. All right, and I also mentioned that so the PPP covered period. So if your RRF has an overlapping period with your PPP, especially PPP-2, that's the one that's in this year. So there may be some overlapping. So then you not only the payroll cost that you used for PPP program should not be counted under RRF. Even the non-payroll costs, such as rent, that you counted under PPP forgiveness, and you should exclude those from the RRF expense as well. All right, and another thing that you should keep in mind is that so you do need to keep all of the expense records. So earlier I showed you how to do the calculation, but all of the receipts that you used to complete that calculation, you should keep those for several years at least. I did not find the exact timeline that that you had to keep those. PPP is for 4 years, for example. Okay, so I would keep those for at least the same length of time, 4 or 5 years, but probably even longer is recommended, like 7 years. So I would keep those records for 7 years. So that's one thing. All right, because you may be asked to provide those documentation to SBA, and then you may be selected to be audited or examined at a later time. Also, for those businesses that received more than 750,000 RRF funds, and then you had to be aware that you may be subject to a single audit. Okay, and that's a type of a government audit. I mean, it's a financial statement, as I said, it's a particular type related to government fund. So any entity that spend federal dollars over 750,000 in a year, so the such businesses are subject to a single audit. So should be aware of that. If you do have if you have received the RRF fund exceeding $750,000. All right, and so this just reinforces that. So $750,000 is the threshold, and that's in the law. Okay, so the CFR Article 200.501 mentions that audit requirement for any non-federal entities that spend $750,000 or more during a fiscal year. All right, and the time is up. Lastly, let me quickly mention. So we do hold weekly, actually daily webinars from Monday all the way through Saturday at 3 p.m. And then we have, they're given in different languages, and the materials are also different. So if you're, you're welcome to come back to for our other webinars every week, this week and other weeks. Okay, so you can go to our website to look for announcements of upcoming webinars, and then you go to our YouTube channel to look for our past webinars, and also you can email one of us, for example, Catherine at communitycpa.com for further information, or call us at our main number 515-288-3188. And we are open from Monday through Saturdays and 8:30 to 5 p.m. every day, except Sunday, and to serve our clients. All right, welcome. Thank you for listening and watching, and see you next time. Bye-bye.